Welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and I have a very special guest with me today. He was once ranked 6th in the world in Ju-Jitsu. It is Mr. Dave Patton fighting out of Serra, BJJ.
There we go.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be on board, as they say, or happy to talk. A lot of wrestling history in this head. Some of it's accurate.
Some of it.
Some of it.
Not all of it. You lived throughout many different eras of wrestling. You lived out the territory days until the monopoly days of WWE, WWF, WCW, all that, and now the independent territories and days. What is the major difference between all of those different eras, in your opinion?
Just to put it out there, I am 55. I am not ashamed. So I go way back. I was born in the 60s. I was introduced to wrestling in the 70s. But the biggest thing now is the amount of information you can get and the expediency that you learn things. Back when I was a kid, you had wrestling, the rag sheets, the fanzines, and that was your information. You were lucky to find those. And, you would be watching wrestling on some local channel weird hours of the day. My introduction to wrestling was WTBS, which I think was a Turner station from Georgia. So they had Georgia Championship Wrestling. So here I am, a kid growing up in Western Pennsylvania. No Mid-Atlantic for me. It was all Georgia Championship Wrestling. Rowdy Roddy was on there. And Orndorff was there for a little bit. And then, but the two I remember, all Snuka came through, a lot of the names. Jake the Snake was there, but it was before his snake thing. And it was just Jake Roberts, and he actually had a perm. So it was pretty unnerving. I was watching some old film. That's the only reason I didn't remember the perm. But my two favorite as a kid were Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2. And they were, I don't know their real identities, they were masked wrestlers, and they had similar physiques in the same mask, and their whole shtick was they would switch without tagging. And it used to drive me insane as a kid. Because when I first watched it, because like every other kid, didn't realize it was fake.
Predetermined. A work. And I can't remember how old I was. Probably 35. No. And my dad's like, you do know this is an act. I'm like, what? Because he was afraid I was getting too upset. Because I would yell at the television. Did knowing that it was predetermined hinder your fandom at all?
No, not really. It actually made it a little more enjoyable for me because I was able to let go of the outrage of the cheating and the heels and the why is this ref still working, when I keep missing it. And it's funny because all of the adults, I think now that watch Marvel movies, of which I'm a great fan, I think are the wrestling fans from back when I was a kid. I think there's a lot of crossover even in the age.
Nowadays, as opposed to back then, wrestlers are being treated more as
legitimate entertainers,
blockbuster names. You had Mr. Nanny. You know, you had some like Jesse Ventura was in Predator.
Yeah,
but that was few and far between. You had Roddy Piper in They Live.
Yeah, that is a great movie. That actually made me appreciate Roddy Piper a lot more too. I love that movie. Jesse the Body had a bunch of roles. He was in Running Man. He was in Demolition Man, very briefly. Yeah, he was one of the Unfrozen. I believe so. Here's that long-term memory problem. No, but he's always basically playing himself.
When you have these larger-than-life guys come in and come out, and then you have the mainstays like Mr. Wrestling 1, Mr. Wrestling 2. How was that kind of different from your fandom when you have the mainstays and then you have the ones that come in every once in a blue moon?
It was different because you don't know what's going on in the different federations, the different territories, excuse me. So, like, I actually, at the beginning, was oblivious to there being other territories. To me, there was Georgia Championship Wrestling, and that's wrestling. It would be like if you didn't know anybody but the Yankees existed, you know. So I just thought some people wrestled more often than others. You know, it takes, like I said, it took you a while unless you started reading the magazines, unless you just didn't know. They were never superstars before. They were always wrestlers.
Right.
Then, you know, the WWE or WWF back in those days came in and they're like, these are the, you know, this is your superstar. This is your big name. And it did make it easier.
That term superstar, from wrestler to superstar, what was the difference like to, hey, these are the guys who were wrestlers on TV, to here's Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Mr. Wonderful as superstars?
I mean, there definitely were the Hulk Hogans and the big names, but I kind of got the feel, especially when they moved towards sports entertainment, that's, oh, they're not wrestlers, they're superstars. So they could stop having to, you know, treat it as a sport, be insured as a sport, etc.
Was there an angle or a superstar that you looked at and you're like, all right, this is sports entertainment, this isn't wrestling how I knew beforehand?
The gobbledygooker. Who was the garbage man? What was his name?
The dumpster Drozy?
Dumpster Drozy. Yeah, those. Every wrestler seemed to have a second job.
An occupation.
I'm like, all right, that's just, you know, that's a bit much. You remember Santa Claus?
Yes, that was Balls Mahoney.
Yes. There's some winners. The Brooklyn Brawler, one of my favorite enhancement talent, who I actually got to meet at a WWE show probably in the early thousands at the Coliseum.
Ooh, how was Brawler like?
He was great. He was actually a road agent, and we're sitting up, and he came out, you know, he wanted the second tier, not to be seen, or first tier up, and I turn, I look at him, and I go, it's a Brooklyn Brawler, and I like completely blew up his spot, and he's like, yeah, he's waving, and he had to leave. But it's just like...
What do you think makes a great wrestling character as opposed to a great wrestler? Because you have people like, not to disparage them, but you have Arn Anderson, you have a current day Roderick Strong, who are phenomenal in-ring talents, but never seem to capture that character to connect with the audience.
I always liked Arn Anderson. That's it. It wasn't like, it wasn't an act. He's not a dumpster, a garbage man. He's not a correction officer. No offense to boss man. He just was this tough guy, and he played the tough guy, and it's still like that. I appreciate it, and I like the fact that now I've definitely changed. I don't need the crazy gimmicks. I like the good, solid wrestling. I love good promos. I love the storylines. Like the whole Bloodline story is amazing.
Absolutely.
I loved it.
Has there ever been a show where you consider it the worst event you've ever been to?
The worst event ever was at WWE, and pretty sure it was at Coliseum back in the day, Long Island, and it was Droz and D'Lo Brown.
Droz gets dropped on his head.
Yeah. D'Lo Brown does the running pile driver.
It was supposed to be a powerbomb.
Right.
Yeah.
But turned out he ran and dropped him right on his head.
Mm-hmm.
And it was weird because the X got thrown up right away. The ref threw the X up to say it was an injury.
Was that your first time seeing the X?
I had seen it before, but I didn't realize what it was. This kind of tipped me off. And it was just not good. You could tell. The medics were in. They boarded him. They collared him. And the one thing that sticks in my head, it is unfortunate. It is a terrible thing to happen to Droz. It happened in the line of wrestling. I just feel, I feel awful for him. But I also feel really bad for D'Lo. Because D'Lo, obviously, he didn't do anything crazy. He just fell. He slipped. He dropped him. And the way he fell. And then D'Lo has to pin this guy that he knows he just hurt severely.
and walk out of the arena all badass, thinking, slamming his chest, looking how great it is.
Was D'Lo still in character?
Oh, he stayed in character the whole
wow.
time. He pinned him and left. And the whole way out, he was, he's doing his job. He did exactly what he's supposed to do. And I felt awful for Droz, obviously. I felt awful for D'Lo. And I don't think D'Lo has ever been the same since then.
D'Lo even admitted he hasn't been the same since because ever since then he would second guess every move that he would do. And in wrestling, second guessing isn't
good
for anything.
You just got to go.
And it's because they never aired that match. They never showed that match on television because SmackDown was a tape show.
Yeah.
And that's what occurred on the SmackDown. Yeah. And just kind of seeing that horrible event take place, how does that affect your fandom? Just kind of being reminding like, hey, these are trained professionals and these guys can get hurt.
Back in about the same era, there was a Jet player, I want to say Dennis Bird, maybe, who got paralyzed during a game. And you just were watching live on TV. Or recently, the Buffalo Bills player that basically died for a few seconds on television. It's weird. It's a very weird situation. That here's this thing you love and like, oh my God, people actually get hurt.
Yeah, it's just kind of an unfortunate things that people get hurt for the love of the game. But speaking about hurting people, with a bad segue right here, you are something of a Ju-Jitsu master.
I'm not a master.
You were top 6 in the world.
No, okay. So I am a Ju-Jitsu black belt, one stripe black belt under Matt Serra. I have competed in the past. I was, technically as a purple belt, I was number 1 in the world because I had no opponent in the first tournament of the season. So I was given the position, because I showed up. I was given my medal, did not want the medal. They said you had to take the medal, and I was ranked for a month, number 1 in the world.
That's not even like a participation trophy because you didn't even
participate.
participate.
I didn't participate. It was embarrassing. And actually, there's a photo of me standing on the podium by myself.
They made you stand on the podium.
Well, what it was is that there were points for the team.
Okay,
team trophy. And at that point, we were under Henzo Gracie Metz. So we had all the Henzo schools together. So to get the points, I had to get the medal. I had to go stand on the podium by myself. And it's actually, if you look on my social media, you dig enough, you will see the picture of me with the Forever Alone face photoshopped on my head.
Where can we find your social media?
Well, you can find me on Instagram as your mom's favorite ref. Was a USA boxing coach for a time. I have done a couple, matches here and there. But I train people. I teach it, with Serra's every now and then. I used to teach more often. I'm kind of in semi-retirement. I'm enjoying not having to get up at 6 a.m. and teach a class.
Yeah, Chuck Liddell ran from you, right? Is that the story?
No, it wasn't Chuck Liddell. My favorite story is years ago. It was José Canseco. José Canseco was, for the Oakland A's, was looking to do a kickboxing match. And they, had it, word was out that they're looking for an opponent. So not a very good kickboxer. I'm pretty good at jiu-jitsu, pretty decent. Not a great kickboxer. I send them my resume as a goof. And at the bottom of it, I put, not afraid to make your guy look good. Ha ha. They called me back. So I think they were interested to see if I was going to take a dive to José Canseco.
Would you have taken a dive?
Would I have taken a dive to José Canseco? Morally, absolutely not. But in the words of Eddie Murphy, how much money? I would have thought about it. It's not my main sport. It's José Canseco. Come on. I don't know.
With you being a heavy background in jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts in general, getting back on the wrestling topic, how do you feel about the integration of these athletes? Like you have, from early on, you have Ken Shamrock, then you have Kurt Angle, then you have Brock Lesnar, then you have Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler, Matt Riddle. You have all these people with MMA legit
fight backgrounds. I love it. and I hate it, especially with the Ju-Jitsu moves, because it's very hard, but not very hard. You look at these guys, and, for a while, The Undertaker was doing the armbar.
Who's in the go-go platter, right?
Go-go platter. There's all kinds of different moves, and everybody simulating these moves, it looks like absolute garbage to somebody who knows what they're doing. It takes me out of the moment, because you'll be watching a match, it's a great match, and then they'll put on a triangle choke, and you're like, oh, that's not even close. I forgot who it was. Somebody the other day. It's a triangle. The triangle choke is the worst, because a triangle choke that's on is tight. You know it's tight. Any jiu-jitsu guy from blue belt up knows it's tight. If you'll see it, you'll look at it, you're like, that's garbage. That's not doing squat. A lot of jiu-jitsu is subtle. A lot of jiu-jitsu, like triangle escapes, they wouldn't be good. The crowd's not going to see what they're doing. It's not going to be good sports entertainment.
Yeah, because with jiu-jitsu, it's a lot of subtle movements that make it.
So it's that's the other thing. It certain things translate well, certain things don't. Old school college wrestling, freestyle wrestling takedowns, they're great because you see them. Mm-hmm. They're a big motion. Jiu-jitsu, small adjustments.
I remember, this is rather recent. This is when Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins were having their rivalry. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to build up Seth for this fight pit match, which is
yes.
The fight pit match is basically an MMA cage, but with 4 corners. To hype Seth up, he would start using the Peruvian necktie,
right?
Which visually isn't going to gather interest from the masses in the audience and the masses at home.
It's a very niche move.
Yeah, when I saw it. I just out of the corner of my eye, if I see Seth Rollins, I'm like, is he doing a Peruvian necktie? Yeah. I'm just like, what an obscure submission to choose from.
And I'm sure that's why he chose it.
Yeah.
I actually, one of my claims to fame is I used to teach at Chris Weidman's gym, Chris Weidman and Ray Longo. So every now and then I would roll against Chris Weidman. And by roll against, it would be Chris Weidman would throw me around the room as warm-up for the real matches. Because the man was ungodly good. But he did a Peruvian necktie to me that was on so fast. I tapped, and my mom tapped, and she lives in New Hampshire. It was unbelievable. A good submission, especially a choke, doesn't hurt. You just go out.
Is that the most believable move, in your opinion, that can transition to wrestling? Or what are submission moves that you think translate well?
Rear naked choke is a classic because it's basically your sleeper hold. Mm-hmm. Arm bar done right with your knees properly, you could do it. I could go out there. I can't do the rest of the wrestling. I am not a pro wrestler. I would love to be one. I never trained for it. I don't want to pass myself off as one or an expert. But you can fake an armbar. You could do it, make it look like it hurts. It's just, a lot of the moves, heel hooks. They do. Problem with heel hooks, you do them right, that knee's exploding. That's another move where you're like, yeah, that's not on. It's hard. It's not a lot to go on. And then there's a lot of gi moves that would be spectacular, but unless you are Judo Jim... You don't have a gi. Remember that guy?
Yeah. I saw the difference between when Brock was putting Kimura on in UFC to when he's putting it on in WWE. With WWE, it's a lot more theatrical.
Yes.
Like his arm is all the way up in the air.
And he's another one. That man can stretch anybody. He's the real deal. He people crap on him. He could fight. He was better than his run in the UFC.
What was something that you noticed that was different from Brock Lesnar from UFC transitioning to WWE?
When he came back, he bought into the WWE a lot harder. He became more rounded because I think he said, all right, I did my UFC thing. I'm now WWE. This is where I'm making my money. I seem to be more dedicated towards it.
We talked about the negatives of MMA transitioning to pro wrestling. What's the positive?
The positives is you can make the movement look more realistic, a little less theatrical. I actually work with a wrestler, Megan Mason. She's an indie. She works at VPW. She works in CFU. I just train her jiu-jitsu. I train her in boxing. And I will help her sometimes just try to adjust it for the show. And it seems to, it's like I tightened her hands up. It makes her hands look more realistic. I know punching in real life is not the same as punching in a, wrestling fashion.
Yeah, but it's still in professional wrestling. If I'm in a match, hypothetically, I'm not just going to drop my hands down.
Right.
You know what I mean? You still got to make it believable.
Right. And this was actually a short story that will kind of, Megan, she works in CFU, Combat Fighting Unlimited. It's more of a shoot style. They use a cage outside the ring, and, it's more of an MMA pro wrestling style.
So it's like the fight pit, but more fight.
Right. And so she had done it last year before I knew her. Or I probably knew her at the time, and she was inexperienced with that style. So she did it, and, she had a good show. They brought her back this year when I'd been working with her, and she was actually really nice. She goes, they're telling me to bring a corner. Do you want to be my corner? So I got to be a personality in the show. But, and she went out there and she did great. She's a tough kid. She's really, like, in real life, it's hysterical. She's the sweetest woman ever, but her persona, so she kind of floats in and out with, heelish, facious, which doesn't work in the grand scheme, but in the indies, it works nicely. She's very talented. She fights in a very realistic style. But it was nice because after the event, she comes over, we thank her. The promoter comes over and pulls me to the side and thanks me and says, "You've done a really good job with her." And I go, "Listen, I just do the jiu-jitsu and the boxing." He said, "No, and he thanked me for coming." So I took it to heart. I liked that. And it turns out he said the same thing to her privately too. So he wasn't just blowing smoke up my ass.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I liked it. But it caved me. I got to be an insider for the first time at the event. And that was cool because here I am, a mark all my life, and now I'm in. We come in and everybody shakes hands and just says their first name, and everybody's on even territory. It was all women's matches. There's a couple of AEW people who showed up for AEW. Julius Smokes was there. He is a unique character. We could do a whole show on that guy. What a lot of fun. There was a guy, KJ Mack, another indie guy, Scottish guy. He is in VPW. And my son and I, every month, go to the VPW shows. That's like our thing.
And VPW is Victory
Pro Wrestling. They're on Long Island. That's where I met Megan. She wrestles for them. They're good shows. You can sit in the front row, cheap. So this guy, KJ Mack, Mohawk, Scottish brogue, really good heel. Just not even like funny, cool heel, just you suck heel.
Like he's doing his job.
Right, he's doing his job. So I see him at this CFU taping, and I go over and he just said, "KJ," I go, "Dave," he shakes, and we're talking. And then later on, I didn't want to lead with it and be too fanboy, but we're talking the whole time, and just super nice guy, super approachable. And I'm like, dude, I got to tell you, my son absolutely fucking hates you. And he laughs. He goes, "I'm doing my job." I go, "Absolutely."
What's the VPW atmosphere like?
It's usually, I would say 80% of the crowd is the same every show. Very loyal fans, odd bunch of people, great. I fit right in. When I say odd, I mean it lovingly. But there's certain people just like their wrestlers. They're wrestlers, and they don't care if they're heels, they don't care if they're faces, they just appreciate the talent. And it's a small show. There's some really, really good talent in there. And I love going to the shows. It's like, my son loves going to the shows. You see things there that you'll see the WWE, the AEW. They're doing it, in the Sportsplex in Bohemia or wherever the hell.
And the independents kind of transitioned from those territory days, except now they're a little bit more plentiful and a lot more small.
In a way, I prefer these little small indie shows. They're very personal. There's a lot of, not audience participation, but they interact with you. They talk to you. Dan Barry. Dan Barry's a local legend. Guy's wrestled everywhere.
Dan Barry, I don't even know if he's done it on purpose. 3 times I've been at shows, and he's made me get out of my seat for some reason. He'll come over, like I'm sitting here with my son. He'll go, get up! We'll get up, and he throws his opponent over the barricade into our seats. One time he grabbed our chairs. He yelled at us to get up. He grabbed our chairs to put a door, to put Mike Anthony through it. One time he had my son stand up and hold the guy while he chopped him. It's a lot of fun. It's just really, the wrestlers there are great. They come out in the intermission. They take photos. Some of them will not break character. It's amazing.
Do you think the magic of pro wrestling is still there, but in a different way because of independent wrestling? Because before, you wouldn't see, let's say, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, come out in intermission
right.
and take photos with the crowd. It's a very different business than it was back then.
Yeah, and it's like you never used to have this, because back in the old territory days, they couldn't break character. You know, the Iron Sheik, he's from Iran. We hate him.
Yeah, Bill Watts would legitimately fire people if they lost a fight in a bar.
Yeah, like there's a character, Evil Kip, a wrestler. Phenomenal wrestler. He will not break character. In the ring, outside, he sells his merch. He's rude to you as you buy his merch. It's great.
And then on the flip side, you have all those seasoned watchers of wrestling who would point that out and say, well, if he's a bad guy, why is he selling merch at a merch table?
That's suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
But, like I said, I'm a semi-smart mark. I know he's not a bad guy. I know he's selling merch. I also know that I enjoy watching him be obnoxious to people. It's great. And I do have to say that you can edit it out if you don't want to, but this is a last VPW show. There's a character called Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep. And he is a heel, and he was great. And I've seen him twice, and he's a good wrestler. But I saw him get so much heat so quickly. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen. Now, the VPW show, it's a family show. It's supposed to be PG, which leads to another story, but I'll get to that after. So everybody's supposed to be, there are kids in the crowd. One of the tag teams breaks up. Dr. Sleep is in the crowd. It was like a four-team match. And he goes to a kid who's there with his baseball team. It's got to be like 8. He goes, all this is your fault. To the kid. The kid just looked like, what? And the crowd just, boo! They're losing it. And later on, he's coming out. He did an attack job on somebody. He comes out, and all the little kids always put their hands up to high-five the wrestlers, and the heels won't do it. So this kid Dr. Sleep's going by. He just makes a shot. He puts his hand out. Same like 8-9, same ball team. Dr. Sleep goes over to high-five him. As he's about to high-five him, he turns his hand and gives him the finger. And the crowd, he ran out of there. You thought the crowd was going to murder him. It was amazing.
I'm still on Dr. Sleep. Is he a doctor of
No.
Like,
his thing is he does the sleeper hold.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Sleep. There is a character, Dr. Cool, Jay Klang.
There's multiple doctors.
There's multiple. Dr. Cool, Jay Klang, comes out for the first time I see him. He's a regular. His shtick is he wears Hawaiian shirt, shorts, doctor's coat. He has glasses that the lenses are the O's in the word cool. Dr. Cool J. Klang. And he looks like the dumbest gimmick of all time. The man can wrestle. The man is an amazing wrestler. But then he pulls his shtick off so well. His whole thing, he'll have sunglasses hidden all over. So somebody will come over and rip off his sunglasses, and he'll just come up with another pair. And it's just dumb. It's so dumb. It works. And I'm a huge fan of the guy. And plus, he can move. He can wrestle.
Do you think anybody that you see, like, give him a couple shout-outs, do you think anybody you see can go to that next level, to a WWE, to an AEW, to an Impact Wrestling?
Definitely. The guy, Jack Tomlinson, he's done enhancement work at both. he's going someplace. He's
I think
going.
I've seen him on TikTok.
Yeah, he's good. He's got a good personality. The Shook Crew, Bobby Orlando
I've heard of him.
and Bryce Donovan.
Heard of him. Yeah.
Those guys, they're some quality talents. Guy Desmond Cole is pretty good. But where Eric James, the throwback, he's fantastic. Personality, looks the part, can do the moves. He's great.
What kind of personality?
His whole thing is he's the throwback. He comes out and he sings "I Want It That Way" to the crowd, and he's just a good, solid face. You know, he's heroic. He's what you like. And I'm trying to think of the other VSK. You've probably heard of him.
Yeah.
Fantastic wrestler, but there's every personality. They're tag team champions. The Even Stevens. They're comedic types.
I've seen VSK since he was a part of Massage Envy and Creator Pro.
Yeah, a lot of the VPW guys are Creator Pro.
Yeah.
But like Mr. Tibbs. Mr. Tibbs he's an older guy. He's smaller. He is fantastic. He is I don't know why. He would be like a 205 Live guy.
Okay.
He's just like he's not big enough physically. The WWE wouldn't pick him up. But he can move. He does the right things. He works with the new talent. It's great to see him. You see him on the card, you know you're going to see a good match.
With your experience of seeing independent shows, besides, again, the production value of a WWE or AEW, what's the biggest pro and the biggest con for watching an independent shows when you're watching WWE and AEW?
The biggest pro of the independent is the accessibility, how close you are to the ring. It's like sometimes it almost becomes a con because you can hear them call the match. The con is just the lack of time, the lack of facilities. They do like VPW, 1 month, one show a month. ECFU is taping 2 shows at a time. They're all streaming. It's hard to move a storyline like that. It's hard to remember what goes on week to week. It's not their fault. The women's division in VPW, there's not a lot of them. It's hard to get the matches, you know. Not the quality of product, but the lack of product, but it's not their fault. It's like...
Right, it's the accessibility of talent in that division. And speaking of women, how do you like the progression of women's wrestling over the past some odd years? From territory to rock and wrestling to current day.
Amazing. It is the women wrestlers. There was a period, maybe 5-6 years ago, where I actually thought the most talented wrestlers in the WWE were the women. Bayley, Charlotte, of course, they're amazing talents. Ronda, good solid wrestler. Kind of, you know, I mean, she needs to be a heel, but it's better than ever been. Rhea Ripley, I think, is fantastic.
Agreed.
And it's very weird because I follow her on Instagram because, you know, I'm a big fan. To see her without the makeup is very strange.
It's very jarring how she looked in the Mae Young Classic when she first debuted with WWE with the long hair.
So different.
Like, she was Charlotte 2.0 almost. And then she found this Rhea Ripley character. And now it's been firing on all cylinders thanks to the Judgment Day.
Throwback. You can actually add this back to the WWE conversation. I saw Brock Lesnar's one of his first dark matches with Crash Holly.
Ooh, let's talk about that.
Oh, first of all, he came out, and this is back when he first started, where he was way bigger.
What was he wearing, the Minnesota Stretching Crew singlet, or was he in the tights at this point?
He was just, I don't remember. I think it was just in tights, but they were nondescript, and he came out and he blotted out the sun. Like, if you have ever seen, go back on YouTube, look at the size of him when he wrestled collegiately. He's not as cut, obviously.
No, he was
enormous.
A thick boy.
Yeah, and he came out, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? And Crash Holly, this is when he would, you know, do the whole shtick with come out with the scale
with hardcore, and it was amazing because he just threw him around. Now Crash is not a big guy, but it was like, oh my God. And by saying Crash is not a big guy, he's like my size.
Yeah, but let's put over Megan Mason. I haven't met her.
I don't have to put her over. She puts herself over. She's got to be
fair, yeah.
something. She gets it. Would be in that golden age. She's an old school wrestler. It's, we're not slapping when we're throwing punches. We're just throwing punches.
She just kind of lays it in there.
She lays it in there. She's working. They have the Gold Rush Rumble in VPW, which is just basically the Royal Rumble renamed. And she comes out, and she's the only woman in the event. And she goes in, and there's another guy, Cade Lothbrook. Good, solid indie guy. Very talented. They're friends. They go in the middle of the ring, and they just start smacking the shit out of each other. So loud, it's echoing. Crack, crack, crack. And she just... And I don't want to say it because she fights like a wrestler. She fights like it's a fight.
Like she's a bruiser.
Yeah. Like, there's like Bubba Ray Dudley out there. She just comes to brawl. And not to say she's not talented, but she makes it look good. And it was really funny because she eventually got eliminated. And as she walks out, she walks by me because I'm sitting there with my son, and she shoves me off my chair because she's so mad she got eliminated.
I mean, come on, it's a Gold Rush Rumble,
Yeah.
Like,
no, she's it's really, and I think the best part is because she's such a great person in real life that this persona is so funny. The CFU will roll it back. She's doing her promo after she won her match, and her whole thing was she's not afraid to work. She's not afraid to train. She goes, I'm not afraid to train with the greatest people in the world, the toughest trainers, the best fighters, like Dave Patton. And she mentions me. So I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I think I just became a character in CFU. So I go, oh, what will my persona be? And my friend Neil, the famous old school Neil I've mentioned before, goes, well, why don't you be opposite in real life and be like a nice guy? I'm like, thanks, Neil, you bag of crap.
Would you actually be a character on a show
if I had? Listen, I will tell you now. One of the few things I regret is never being able to pro wrestle, and I've looked into it. I would love to. I'm a referee. I referee Ju-Jitsu, and I would love to ref pro wrestling. Creative Pro is not far from us, and I looked into it. But they want you to do 3 months of training as a wrestler. And I agree with that, and I fully understand it. But my injury history at this point, I can't take those bumps for 3 months.
List them off for the viewers, because I know your injury history.
Oh, no, my injury history is pretty much bad neck, bad back, hand surgeries, broken noses.
All the minor stuff.
Dislocated ankles, torn LCL. Just, it's mostly my neck. I have herniated disc C5, C6. I can't take the bumps. I would love to do a show. That's why I enjoyed that CFU show. I got to be part of the show. Didn't wrestle, can't wrestle, not a wrestler. I want to make sure. I never want anybody to say I claim to be a wrestler. I'm not.
I'll put that in.
No, it's just, I don't like people that, listen, I respect them. They're professionals. They are, they earn their title and what they are. I'm not a wrestler. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I am a referee. I'm a passable boxer in the back of the day.
Do you think jiu-jitsu and MMA guys are a different kind of tough than professional wrestlers, or do you think they're on the same level? It is
a different world. Jiu-jitsu and boxing and MMA, you're out there, you're going to be hurt. The whole intent is to hurt the guy you're working with. Pro wrestling is exactly the opposite. I'm going out there not to hurt my opponent. I'm there to protect my opponent and make it look good. Mark Henry, the world's strongest slam. Terrifying. Every person to a T I've ever heard has said they took that, it was like being held by like a baby. He said he did nothing but protect you. That's the big difference. When you get hurt in wrestling, it's because something went really wrong. And you get hurt in MMA, it's because somebody did something really right.
Yeah.
It's a different mentality. There's crossover. Jake Hager, Lashley did MMA.
Lashley's another guy that'll stretch you.
Yeah.
Um,
How do you feel about professional wrestlers going into the MMA space? Because we had Lashley do it. We had, like you said, Hager do it.
Yeah.
Punk did it.
Well,
Batista did it.
Batista did it the right way. Hager's he annoys me, but Hager did it the right way. Punk didn't do it the right way. Punk tried to get a big bite. He tried to be, go in a big pond. Batista went, he fought indie show somewhere. Small, local, not indie, but local MMA. He worked his way up. Lesnar is a one-of-a-kind MMA. Well, not one-of-a-kind, but he's a top level. He's one of the few guys that could just switch over. But again, he's been wrestling, collegiate freestyle all his life. Angle, same thing. These guys are legit fighters. You could be a great wrestler and not a legit fighter. You could be a legit fighter and not a great wrestler. They're mutually exclusive. It's not like it's not the same skill set at all. And then there are people who are both.
Who do you think transitioned best from it?
MMA to wrestling?
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to ask you wrestling to MMA.
It's easy. Well, the answer's the same. It's Brock Lesnar. What other pro wrestler did as well in MMA? None. What MMA guy was as big in pro wrestling? None. Lashley had some good fights. He also fought his way up, but he didn't have the big fights. Basically, and this is going to irritate some people, in MMA there's the UFC here, and then Bellator, One, Strikeforce. Strikeforce is gone. They're
a tier below.
They're a tier below. It just is. You might not like it. It's how it is.
Just how competition is.
Yeah.
Do you think Brock Lesnar benefited from the heavyweight division of the UFC being as weak as it was?
It wasn't that weak. I think he just, guys like Frank Mir. Frank Mir is a very talented jiu-jitsu guy. He's a very big guy. I think the sport was younger, for sure. I think he benefited a bit just being an amazing athlete. I think he benefited by being a lifelong wrestler. Mm-hmm. He actually lost the Mir fight, I believe. Was that the one that was disqualification? I'm trying to remember. No,
that one he tapped.
He got the foot lock.
Yeah.
There was a different fight where they said he struck in the back of the head, which was questionable. But it's hard to tell. There's definitely eras in the UFC. There's some guys now that are spectacular, moving. They move like lightweights at heavyweight. Does he do as well? He's also almost 50.
Right. Taking Brock Lesnar from back then when he first debuted in the UFC, we plop him into UFC of today. How does he do?
He would have a lot harder time, but the sport is older. Mm-hmm. But if you take Brock Lesnar, put him 10 years ago in his prime, or if he had come up in the sport now, mm-hmm. he would be, a lot better too. It's just the training, it's just the schools that are available is much better. So if you said, let's just say he was 25 5 years ago, so now he's 30, he's been training in the schools they have now for 5 years, he'd be great. The man's a stud athlete.
Do you think anybody in current day professional wrestling can make a transition to MMA that we haven't seen before?
Matt Riddle. No. No, I mean, it's nobody strikes me as just pops out because, like I said, it's two separate skills. But anybody in pro wrestling could make the transition. They're athletes.
What was the most surprising lightning in a bottle when it comes to MMA and wrestling? Just kind of transitioning to that more realistic style of WWE and entertainment and adapting these MMA-like philosophies.
But if they do, it's
just like, it's like before you didn't have the tap out. Like Taz was the one who brought the tap out.
Right, the Taz mission.
Yeah, like where opponents were tapping out before. It's like they would just move the arm and to see if they passed out.
Yeah. I don't think there was any decisive moment or any. I think they've actually been very subtle about moving it in. And like I said, that's the techniques themselves. It's hard to do. It's hard to duplicate. Like leg kicks. You don't see a lot. You never used to see a lot of, like, you see them wear the shoulders and control holds and, roll. You didn't see a lot of people wearing the legs down. Oh, I'm going to kick the leg. You would see them stomping on the knee. But now you have people kicking the legs standing up. That's become, more ingrained in people's head. Hey, that hurts.
Like wrestlers have been wearing more kick pads.
Right.
Like
so you can really lay into it.
We're about to wrap up here, but I always ask, what is your favorite match? Or just give me a couple favorite matches that you have and why.
The favorite match, and it's kind of a cop-out pick at it, but Undertaker Mankind.
The Hell in a Cell?
Hell in a Cell. The greatest thing I have ever seen in my life. It is just, it's amazing because it's gutsy. It's crazy. It's like, oh my God, how is he getting up from that? And you can actually see the expression on Undertaker's face if you get the right camera angle. Mm-hmm. That he doesn't even understand how he's still getting back up.
What's amazing about that too is not only Mick Foley dives off the cell and then climbs back up and then just to go that wasn't supposed to happen either.
It just collapsed.
Yeah. Undertaker has a broken foot throughout the whole match.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
His foot was completely, because that's why Mick Foley wanted to do the cage spot to begin with, because he's like, I suck in a cage. Undertaker's got a broken foot. I have to make this match different from the first Hell in a Cell match, which was incredible.
That to me is never to be rivaled. That is untouchable to me.
I'm going to push back a little bit. It's a different Hell in a Cell match, though.
Okay.
One of the most recent Hell in a Cell matches. The Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins Hell in a Cell match, where Cody Rhodes competes with his pec completely torn off the bone. It's a different kind of brutality.
That's a storytelling.
Yeah.
And you could even accuse of the Undertaker, Foley's being a spot fest. I mean, it did tell a story.
People accuse it as being a stunt show. Like Ric Flair had that famous saying about Mick Foley, he's just a glorified stuntman.
Right. Stuntman, spot fest.
And that was also the first time they used thumbtacks.
Yeah. But, no, that to me is a big one. That was a great match. And I just had a second one pop in my head. Hogan winning the title from the Sheik. That was, just to see that was mind-blowing. Oh my God. The Iron Sheik has been defeated. And it's funny because I always equate people's happiness and cheering and to that. I'm like, what'd you feel like? I felt like I was Hulk Hogan just beating the Iron Sheik,
So that's like the magnum opus when it comes to crowd reaction.
Yeah, well, that's also, I'm viewing that through the eyes of like a 15-year-old, 14-year-old. So,
right, yeah.
That's thinking back.
Is that more nostalgia?
Is it? Maybe. But it's a great moment. The funny thing is, I don't remember the match. I remember that moment.
You remember the drop the leg.
Drop the leg, and the crowd just absolutely going fucking bananas.
Has any match or moment in wrestling come close to that, in your opinion?
No, but when Reigns goes, that will be pretty close.
And this is a great question to ask you, too, because you went through those eras with people being champions for multiple years at a time.
Hogan was like...
Yeah, how has Roman Reigns' reign compared to all those championships when people hold it for multiple years, when nowadays that's a rarity?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I remember when they were pushing him in his as a face, and you're like, all right, get this guy off my screen.
Yeah.
Now, and a lot of it is Heyman, but the chemistry between the two of them, it's fantastic. I love seeing him as a scumbag, and the Usos, the whole bloodline. It's just it's an amazing story. They have the right characters. Sami Zayn was fantastic. Owens is an underrated talent.
I agree.
He's fantastic. But I was at, where was I? At was it SmackDown? Yeah. At Mohegan. It was Mohegan Sun a couple months ago. My son and I.
That's right. You were there.
We were there. And we were close enough that you could see Heyman's facial expressions. And that man is a genius. The whole bloodline story, if you don't have Heyman, falls apart.
I say if you don't have any one person within that bloodline story, it falls apart.
But I think he is the glue. He is the heart and soul of that
I will say a close second to that bloodline story, and it's not Roman, it's Jay.
Yeah, I remember when they first came out. And it was just like, I think I saw them live pretty early, and I was just like, yeah, they're all right, but they've come into their own.
Would you rank the bloodline storyline as a whole within the top 10 wrestling stories?
Easily top 10, easily.
What about top 5?
Yeah, I would say top 5.
Oh, wow.
Possibly, and again, it's a recency bias.
Yeah, of course.
It's definitely top 5. It's just so well done.
Like, if you had other wrestling stories, what would you compare that to? Just opinionated.
I can't, like, the whole Hogan chasing the title was great. I mean, I'm an old man guy. Yeah, but that, and, I remember the other match.
You see what happens when we talk like this?
The TLC match.
Which one?
Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys.
WrestleMania 2000 or 17?
The first one was crazy. That one...
That was SummerSlam 2000.
I think it was SummerSlam. That was one of the best matches I've ever seen. That was just... They just went for it. All right, but back to the storylines. See, the thing is, that's why... Think about it. What other storylines can you think of? You're having trouble thinking of other storylines. This bloodline, although it's recent, it's so well done. Mm-hmm. There have been... So-and-so chases a title, Hacksaw and Iron Sheik, Yeah.
I think a lot of complaints with the bloodline story is that all the opponents that gone up against Roman are pretty much either A, one and done, and B, bloodline interference. So they don't get the follow-up. And that's where a lot of people's fears with Cody come from. And, of course, this introduction of a new World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah. And people are calling it the Consolation Championship.
You got to remember, it's the internet era. Yeah. There will always be people who don't like something.
Agreed,
and for stupid reasons.
Yeah.
You can't go on Twitter anymore.
It's like what I said when Roman beat Cody. I can't criticize the book when I didn't finish reading it.
Right.
I could criticize the chapter, but again, I haven't finished reading the book.
Yeah, like, they could have ended it that night and Cody won, and it would have been an end of a great story. Mm-hmm. But they can still end the story well, And I think it was the whole swerving with the bloodline and Sammy and Jay. I think that was fantastic.
Agreed.
Because I'm sitting there, and I'm like, that's it. This is it. They're gonna go to he's turning over new leaf, and this is as an adult who knows what's going on. And then somebody goes, it's gonna be so sad when he turns on Sammy, and I was just like, oh my God, he's gonna turn on Sammy. And I was like, shit. I became very emotionally invested.
Yeah. And that rarely happens in wrestling, at least in my opinion, nowadays.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining me on here. It's great that we've been talking about having you on the show for a while.
I'm happy to do it. I'm glad that you were here and able to fill in the gaps in my memory and give me, the details do run together.
And again, always an open invite for you. If you ever have one of those thoughts, you could call me at 3 a.m. saying, hey, can we talk about this? I'm like,
there you go.
Absolutely.
Actually, you should do a watch event. We get SummerSlam. Okay. You and maybe we all watch and just comment on it.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
And it's good because you don't see me, so I have, as my mother used to say, I have a face for radio. So.
All right, Dave, where can we find you on the socials if you want to give them?
Like I said, I am on Instagram at Your Mom's Favorite Ref. If you like dog pictures, if you like Ju-Jitsu and stupid dad jokes, that's your place. Facebook, don't even bother. I have that for family. It's boring.
Yeah, not a problem. And where can we find Megan?
Megan, she is on Facebook. She is Megan the Facebreaker Mason. I'm off the top of my head. You know what? I'm going to look it up because I don't want to be that guy and give you the wrong information because she's worth the work. Yeah, it's Megan Breaks Faces.
Ooh, that's a good handle.
Yeah, and that's good. And also, I want to give out a shout-out, if I may. A shout-out, I'm like, old man. No, to my Rocksteady boxing team. I work at a nearby medical school with Parkinson's patients using boxing as therapy, and they're a bunch of maniacs and they work really hard. So I just want to give them a shout out in case they are listening to the wrestling podcast and hear this.
Oh, that'd be great.
So
we always like more listeners here.
yes, all right.
All right, Dave. Thank you as always. And my name is Richie Mars. You could find me on Instagram and the Twitter at Retold Richie Mars, and on the TikTok, the one Richie Mars. And this has been Wrestling Retold and Relived. See you guys again next Tuesday. Same podcast time, same podcast channel. And here we go. TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
I know that one.